I read 4 books. I read 4 books last month, so naturally I have 7 books in my November TBR. Hi everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Anthea and today we are going to go through my November TBR. So without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into it. We have 7 books on my list that I am very, very excited to read. There's a lot of books in this list that follow a very similar genre, which I didn't quite realise until I put this list together. Anyway, the first book on my TBR is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. So this book, okay, number one, look how gorgeous this book is. It's absolutely beautiful and I'm so happy that I have the physical of this one. So this is the first book on my November TBR and it follows 2 characters in this book. As you can see, I have already actually read a little bit of this. I'm on page like 100 or something and I started this at the end of October, so I really want to finish this off in November. It's really, really good. And yeah, like I mentioned, it follows 2 characters, Yumi and Painter. Now, Painter is from a planet called the Komashi, and in this world it's a very dark and grungy like kind of environment. It's enveloped by this dark mist and everything is quite, the sense I get from how it's written, it seems quite damp. There's no light, everything is almost in darkness aside from this kind of neon magenta and like blue light that runs through the city. And within this world there are these creatures, these nightmare creatures that are created by the mist, by this dark mist outside of the city. And what they do is they go into the city and they kind of feast upon the people's nightmares. The more they feed on people's nightmares, the more they turn into like this physical creature that can actually cause harm and kill humans. And the job of a painter, of a nightmare painter, is to capture these nightmare creatures before they become an actual physical being. So what Painter does, him and his nightmare painter crew, they go around the outer rim of the city to try and locate these nightmare creatures, to capture them by painting this on a canvas when they see these nightmare creatures, and paint them in a way that they use these very non-threatening objects so that the creature would actually turn their attention on the painter and they'll take into the form of what they have painted. So for instance, Painter, he usually would paint like a bamboo stick. So when he paints them, the creature would then take upon this bamboo stick, and then because it's like a non-threatening object, the creature kind of just disintegrates and disappears. So that's the world that Painter lives, and that is the job that Painter does. Now in Yumi's world, she lives in a very different place, a very different planet, whereby for her everything is warm, sunny, light. They do like meditations, they've got beautiful gardens. As a baby, she was chosen to be, let me check, the Yokihijo. So as the Yokihijo, excuse my pronunciation, I don't know if that's correct or not, but as this individual, she is someone who can summon the spirits through art. And the spirits that she summons are able to grant the local villagers their requests. So for instance, if a villager has lost water within their house for the last 2 months, the spirit will be able to grant this villager this wish to be able to kind of have running water again in her house. So that's the kind of thing that those spirits are able to do. They are there to help and serve the villagers because of the art and the magic that Yumi is able to do. And she has been doing this all her life. She has been trained to do this all her life, and that's all she has known. The position that she is in as this chosen one is a very prestigious position. It's very honorable to be chosen, and that is something that has been drummed into her since a very young age. So she has always felt like she is a very lucky person. Sorry, had some technical difficulties there, so my camera maybe have changed slightly, but let's ignore that. Anyway, as I was saying, Yumi has been told all her life that her role and her being chosen is a very like honorable thing. Like she should be very grateful that she's been chosen to be this individual that everyone in the village looks up to, and you don't want to kind of let anyone down, do you? You know, you need to really keep up with the work that you're doing. So that's the kind of environment that she has been put into throughout her life, basically. And any negative emotion that she feels, so anything like she feels a bit resentful or she feels really tired and she wished she didn't have to do this all the time, she would immediately feel really guilty about feeling those negative feelings, because all her life she's been told that this is a very honorable thing that she's doing. To be chosen to be doing this, she should be very grateful about it. So it's a very difficult kind of situation that she's been put in for something that she didn't pick for herself. So that's Yumi, and those are the two characters there that we follow in this story. And then for some reason, partway through the story, their worlds collide. They end up crossing in each other's, their path end up crossing basically. And then we're now following them in this story of why have their paths crossed, like what's going on. Is it the spirits in Yumi's world that has caused this? Is there a reason for this? Why have they chosen these two individuals? And you know, is it just a coincidence, or is there something? Is like a bigger picture that they are been put into? Like what's the reason behind it? So this is like what we are doing now, what we are following. And that's kind of the part that I've got to as well in the book. So I am very, very excited to carry on reading this book and see where it goes. And yeah, super excited. So that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. So the next book I have here is, I think, very popular. I think a lot of people are already aware of this book. It's not been out for that long. It was released in October of this year, October 2023. So the next book on my TBR is none other than The Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Now this is also another very beautiful book. It is quite the chonker. I didn't realize how thick this book would be. As I was showing you guys how thick the book is, I didn't realize that some of the pages had been kind of ripped, and I think it's my cat's doing. I think he was kind of having a bit of fun. You can't see it in the camera because it's so bright, but he's kind of ripped my book. Anyway, never mind. So The Swordcatcher is a new adult fantasy romance book, I believe. So this book is set in a city called Castellane, I think. It follows an orphan who was kidnapped or stolen called Kel, and he has been chosen to be the sword catcher, which is basically a body double of the prince called Connor Aurelaine, I think, Aurelaine. And what Kel's role is to basically be the prince's body double. He needs to be skilled in combat, and he needs to be there to protect the prince if he is ever in trouble. And although they have a very close relationship, they're like brothers to each other, Kel knows that at the end of the day he would need to put his life on the line for the prince, and you know, he will basically die for the prince. And that is his role, and that is kind of how he's been brought up and how he has been trained. And then there's another character called Lynn, who is part of a small community of people who have magical abilities, and they've been kind of shunned away from normal society, and by law they have to live within the city walls. However, Lynn, because of like certain circumstances, I think something to do with her like really close friend who's like really ill or something, because of that she has decided that she needs to venture beyond the walls in order to find a forbidden magic ability or some forbidden like magic to help her friend. And then because of a failed assassination, Kel and Lynn are somehow then brought together because of it, and then they get drawn into this underworld place where the rag picker king lives. They discover secrets and they discover like corruptions that's been happening in the city, and from there they I don't really know, to be honest, but I guess that's where the story goes. Like it kind of carries on from there, and I think this is could be a duology. That's what Goodreads says. There's like a second book called like The Rag Picker King or something like that, and this is the first book to that duology, but who knows, it could be like a long list of other books. But anyway, this is The Sword Catcher by Cassandra Clare, and I'm super excited to read this big chonker of a boy. The next book I have is The Wicked King. It is the second book in the Folk of Air series by Holly Black. This one is again a YA fantasy. It's like a fairy tale setting, and it follows a girl called Jude and her two sisters, her twin Taryn and also her older sister Vivian. And in The Cruel Prince, which is the first book to this trilogy, they are taken by a stranger from their home in like the normal human world after their parents are murdered right in front of them. So they're taken into the High Courts of Fairies world, where all these different like fairies and mythical creatures live. And they've been living there for the past 10 years. And in this world, it's tough for them to survive in. So it turns out from The Cruel Prince that Vivian, the older sister, is actually half fairy. So the stranger who had taken them is actually Vivian's biological father. Whereas for Jude and Taryn, Taryn? I don't know how to pronounce the name, but the Jude and Taryn, the twins, they are full humans. So for them to try and survive in this world is quite difficult. And it follows Jude and her way of trying to survive this world, and her idea is to become a guard, to be like chosen to be a guard, or like a knight or guard for the king. And that's her way of kind of surviving and belonging in this world. And with the first book, we see how it is difficult for the two sisters to kind of integrate with the fairy world. We follow Jude and her trying to become a guard or like a knight for the king, and that's her way of belonging in the fairy world. Now, in this world, it is a very cruel place for humans to live in, because fairies and those mythical creatures, they see humans as a second-class citizen, or not even. They see them as more of just these mortal creatures that are, they have very fleeting lives that don't even matter. Unlike the fairies, who are immortal, who are beautiful, who have magical abilities. So that's kind of what they are dealing with as human beings living in this world. And so Jude just tries her best to survive in this place. And that's kind of the story that you follow in The Cruel Prince. Her way of surviving, what she does, her relationship with her sisters as well. And many people say that The Cruel Prince, they didn't quite like The Cruel Prince. I personally actually quite enjoyed The Cruel Prince, so I'm looking forward to reading The Wicked King, which follows obviously the ending of The Cruel Prince, which I'm not going to say what happened because that's going to ruin the book for you if you haven't read it yet. But there is like a big twist that occurs at the end of Cruel Prince. This next book, The Wicked King, follows directly after that situation. So I'm super excited to read about that and see what happens next. The following book is also a second book in a trilogy series. It is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber, and it is a second book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. Again, it is a YA fantasy, romance, fairy tale. And yeah, I kind of want to read this partly because the new book, A Curse for Love, I think it's called, is out, and everyone's raving about it. Everyone said that this second book was really good as well, so I kind of want to read that for that reason. The first book I enjoyed, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought that I would. Because a lot of people said it was amazing, so I kind of had this expectation of it being amazing, which, you know, I enjoyed it, but I didn't find it anything that great. Please don't kill me for saying that. I think possibly because of the main character, Evangeline. She is very naive, if I can say that. She wants to find true love, and she's just a bit naive with things around her and the people around her, and things that kind of happen that she kind of just brushes off and is like, oh no, she's, you know, this person isn't actually that bad, and that kind of stuff. So that annoyed me a little bit about this particular character. But again, second book, I've heard that the second book's really good, and it's left on a cliffhanger, which if I was to read it, I can read A Curse for True Love. I don't know what it's called now. I heard, obviously that's out already, so I don't need to wait if I decide to read the third book. But yeah, I wanted to know what happens in the second one. I think that'll be quite fun to know and to read. So yeah, that's the fourth book. Is it a fourth book? That's the fourth book on my TBR, A Ballad of Never After. Okay, so a change of pace. The next book I have on my TBR is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. So this is a mystery thriller, and it follows a lady called Casey, who is a widow, and to escape what has happened, she goes and lives in her family's lake house. And from there, this lake house is situated opposite this couple's home, who she kind of spies on with her binoculars. I think it's like she sees it as a bit of a way to pass the time. So she kind of just spies on this couple who seem to have this perfect life, and yeah, I think she just haven't read it, but I think it's more of like she envies that life, and she just likes to like see what they're up to, that kind of stuff. And then one day, Casey saves the lady who lives across the lake. The wife, called Catherine, saves her from drowning, and then from there they kind of spark up this friendship. But through like the conversations that she has with Catherine, and through like further spying, I guess, or noticing, I suppose, she discovers that actually, you know, the couple isn't as perfect as it seems. It's not as great as it looks on the outside, which she kind of discovers. And I think what happens is that Catherine then vanishes, she disappears, and Casey kind of wants to know why, wants to know what happened. You know, they're like just started this friendship, and why has she just suddenly disappeared? Has it got anything to do with the husband? I feel like maybe the police will be like involved and may find Casey as a possible suspect. I have no idea. I'm just guessing at this point. That is The House Across the Lake, and I'm looking forward to reading this. Like I mentioned, it's a very different genre to my list on my TBR, but yeah, I think it'll be great. The next book that I have is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is a sci-fi young adult sci-fi, I believe. It's like a space adventure kind of book, and it's the first book in a trilogy. In the Skyward trilogy. And yeah, it's another Brandon Sanderson. I love his writing, so I am, you know, excited to read this, and I wanted to put this in my TBR so that I can hopefully give me more of an incentive to actually get through the books that I really do want to read. So this is Skyward, and it's set in a world where the human race has almost been driven into extinction due to the planet that they live in is always being under attack by these alien spacecrafts. And we followed this girl called Spencer, and she has always wanted to be a fighter pilot to help to destroy these alien spaceships that's trying to wipe them out basically. But I think she has been barred from becoming a fighter pilot because her father, who I think during like a very big battle in the past, like a really big war that happened, he had fled. He kind of ran away, and then I guess the fighter pilots had to shoot him down, not knowing what was going on, why he was leaving, and I guess they can't just leave once they're kind of engaged in battle, I suppose. So kind of that's following a character called Spencer, and she then comes across and discovers like a broken down ancient spaceship, and she tries to repair it, and she thinks that if she's able to repair it, able to fly it, then she may be allowed into the fighter pilot training. And then she also discovers that this spacecraft has a soul as well, so she's kind of trying to work with this spacecraft and trying to, I think, get the spacecraft to work with her to help her out, which sounds really interesting. So I am looking forward to reading this book. Like I mentioned, it is a YA sci-fi space adventure by Brandon Sanderson. He usually writes a lot of epic fantasy, so I am excited to read what this one is like. So the final book that I have on my TBR is The Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This is part of the Expanse series. It's the first book of like an 8-book series. It is a sci-fi adventure space book, and I've only like read 30 pages of this, so I do really want to kind of get into it, but there's just been so many other books, so I get distracted so easily. But anyway, so this book is, like I mentioned, part of the Expanse series. So this book takes place in the galaxy where the humans have now kind of scattered across the galaxy and is living on like the moon, on Mars, on the asteroid on the asteroid belt. And so yeah, there's just loads of different humans, different kinds of human beings in all of these different places across the galaxy. And this first book follows Jim, who works on the mining station on the asteroid belt, and him and his crew have been called to check out this wrecked ship, basically, that's just kind of floating around in the in space. So they have been called to check it out and see what's happened. And from looking at this ship, they kind of see that at first it looked like it was like pirates that had gotten into the ship, but then on further inspection they find that nothing valuable or nothing considered valuable has been taken from the ship, so it couldn't have been pirates. So they're just trying to discover like, what is it, why is this ship just been abandoned and wrecked, but nothing valuable has been taken? There's not even like any floating human bodies inside that could, suggest that there had been like an accident inside or anything like that. So were those people captured? Did something happen? They kind of just followed that story, and that's kind of what I've gotten in right now into the book. And then there's also like a separate character as well called Detective Miller. I'm just reading from the back now at this point. Detective Miller, who's looking for a girl, one girl an assistant of billions, but her parents have money and money. Okay, apologies for the absolute change in quality of the video and the sound. My camera decided to die and I'm trying to charge it up right now, but I don't have time to wait for it to charge, so I'm just going to use my phone. We'll just have to deal with it. So anyway, as I was saying, Leviathan Wakes, and I think I was reading from the back of this book and how we also follow a separate character called Detective Miller, who is looking for a girl, and her parents have money and money talks. When the trail leads him to the Scorpuli, which is what the ship is actually called, the ship that was abandoned, that the crew had discovered, is called Scorpuli. So when the trail leads him to the Scorpuli and rebel sympathizer Holden, he realizes that this girl may hold the key to everything. So that is The Leviathan Wakes. This is one of the books that my husband had recommended me, so I'm excited to read this, along with all the other 7 books that I have, all the other 6 books, so 7 in total, on my November TBR. So here is the stack plus the other two pretend they're up here, the Wicked King and the Ballad of Never After. That is my 7 books on my November TBR. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!